Okay, are we ready? All right. First, I need to get an approval for the minutes of the August 22nd meeting. Thank you, Linda and Betty. Are there any additions or corrections? No? Okay. All those in favor of the minutes as in the book, please state aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Next, we are on to the budget book. We're just going to take all of these at once. Does anybody have any comments or concerns about the budget? Anything for the budget? Yeah. Questions?
You want to get a motion on the floor?
Oh, yeah. Let's do that. Thank you, Steve. All right, Steve, can I get a second? Thank you, Junior. Okay. Oh, wait, and Scott's going to go through a slide deck, correct?
Yeah, I can do that real quick, Chairman. It's going to be for those that saw any of yesterday's committee meetings or were participants in yesterday's committee meetings. There's going to be obviously some overlap and some redundancy, but we'll do that relatively quickly. For those that haven't yet, this slide depicts the sources and uses of funds. Sources is where the money comes from. Uses are how we use those dollars. This is for not just this committee's oversight, but the entire organization. So it's all funds. $148 million in revenues, $151 million-ish, a little bit less than that in expenditures. Property taxes, as we had a significant debate and discussion during Ways and Means Committee meeting yesterday, this is how is recommended in the budget book for property taxes for FY23. The blue and gray shaded wedges are the operating funds of the county. The red and pink are the pension-related funds of the county. Quick note on EAV, which is the value of property across the county based on data from the supervisor assessments. We are looking at a 4% increase, and we expect that to be smaller and modest increases for the next couple of years. Total levy recommended is $29.4 million. The rate is 83.21 cents per $100 of equalized assessed value. That's a 0.8 cent increase to levy. As we talked yesterday at Ways and Means Committee, that's a reflection of compliance with Public Act 102-0732, which is related to the Veterans Assistance Commission. As it relates to this committee's oversight, this committee has oversight of $27.6 million in revenues and $26.15 million in expenditures across multiple funds and departments. If you want to see how that stacks up to the rest of the other committees, that's 19% of the total revenues for the entire organization and 17% of the expenditures. Looking exclusively at the entire general fund, so again, just not this committee's oversight, but the entire general fund, you can see that it is a balanced budget at $50,877,000 and change. And then lastly, this committee's oversight within the general fund is $1.59 million in revenues, which is roughly 3%, and $1.64 million in expenditures, which is also 3%. So that's the slide deck. Mr. Chairman, happy to answer any questions of the committee members on any part of the orange pages in the book or any other section for that matter.
Thank you, Scott. I do have something that I would like us to discuss just for a minute, and that is the Pcaps budget. I had reached out to Becky because I had noticed for the animal control, this would be on page 10, the animal control portion of the expenditures, there wasn't anything listed for educational and training. And I asked her if that was accurate, that I would think there would be some continuing ed for our animal handlers. And she said that they had broke out the expenditures and had added this, and she had forgot to put anything there. So I would like to make sure that they have, she would have put $1,000 there, and I would like for her to be able to have that for continuing education. So we can do this one of two ways. We can do an amendment to the budget and add the $1,000, or we can include it in the rollover appropriations in March. So I just kind of wanted to get input as to how the committee thinks we should approach that.
Is there enough in the rollover for next year that it could be accommodated within that?
There's more than adequate reserves to do it either way. So reserves of Pcaps, which is from a fund perspective, is a general fund type fund, but it is a separate fund. And just quickly turning to Pcaps in the orange pages. All right. Fund balance is, a little over $2.1 million. So there's adequate reserves available to handle a $1,000 expenditure.
I guess more is where's the appropriate from a budgeting transparency standpoint to account for this line item?
They're both, from my perspective, they're both equally transparent. It's just a function of, they're not going to incur those training costs, in the first 2-3 months of the year. And if they did, they've got sufficient funds where they could move money around to cover it. So it's perfectly transparent and appropriate to include it in the open purchase order rollover appropriation. So the first budget amendment we do of the year, included in that list of items, or it's equally transparent and appropriate to amend the budget book itself. As I was explaining to the chairman, operationally for staff, we would prefer to do in the rollover appropriation, because then we don't have to be making a whole bunch of changes to the book itself. But if it's the committee's desire to do it as part of the original appropriation, perfectly fine. We'll make it work.
So is everybody agreed that a rollover is okay during the rollover appropriation? Okay.
Excuse me, would you clarify that again?
That we would just include it in the rollover appropriations
Yes.
in March, rather than doing an amendment to the book
Yes.
to add it there. Okay. Okay. That was really the only kind of questions, comments I had. Does anybody have any other questions on any of the orange pages? Yeah.
Sorry. So the first one's not a question, maybe it's an ask of Mr. Sorrell to speak to the IMRF adjustment. This actually is a positive one for us at this point, but just for an education and transparency, if you would, please.
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Ricker. And so for those of you following along in your books, the IMRF fund starts in the orange pages on number 11. And you can, tracking to prior year expenses and current year, you can see that there's a pretty marked decrease in both revenues and expenses recommended for FY23. The expenditures are recommended to decrease by 27.8%. That's a little over $1.16 million. That's a function of a couple of different things. One, smaller workforce, and that workforce, a higher percentage of that workforce being a Tier 2 or IMRF employee. And the second causation of that is our rate that we get from IMRF is based on prior year's market performance. So if we think about the market performance which would include the investments of IMRF in calendar year 20 and 21, we saw significant increases in the markets, and therefore market performance allowed for a decrease in the rate coming from IMRF. Obviously, market performance in 2022 will be reflected in the FY24 rate that we receive from IMRF for when we go through this process a year from now. And that obviously may have an impact and may see that portion of the county's levy go up if we want to talk a little bit about forecasting.
Okay, appreciate that. And I guess the last comment I'd like to confirm is that this will ensure the county is fully funding our IMRF obligations. We're not kicking the can down the road or anything else, right?
100% correct. This is where county governments differ from municipal governments. All of the team members at Peoria County that are on our payroll working a minimum of 1,000 hours are required to be and are enrolled in IMRF. There's 3 different components of IMRF, but they are all enrolled in IMRF. The board has a longstanding policy, and this budget is in compliance with that policy of fully funding the employer's obligation of pensions.
Okay, thank you. That's I think is very important for people to understand that we do truly fund, and we are current on our funding. We're not behind on any funding, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And I have one other question, Mr. Chairman, if I could. In the health fund, the employee health fund, which is on page 25, just more of a call out for clarification. On page 25, there's a transfer from general in account 42001 of $255,250. I think I know what that's for, but I'd just like you to clarify what that's for. Sure. So we can educate people.
Absolutely, Mr. Ricker. Thank you for the question. So there is a recommended transfer of $255,000 to and change from the general fund to the employee health fund. That dollar value covers the recommended subsidy to the employee share of health insurance premiums for FY23.
Okay. No, thank you, because that was an action that I think our current chairman, Mr. Renaud, took last year, right, to provide subsidy for the employees' health care, and we carry over a subsidy program for 2023. You want to make any comments to that? Just be more transparent.
Yes, last year to cover some of the employee costs, I believe it was almost 380,000, correct? 355. So this year we dialed back the subsidy some, and but we're still subsidizing the employees to help pay for the employee portion of the healthcare premiums. I found one more question that I had written down, Scott. It was on in the risk management fund.
Yes.
I noticed that our reserve went up considerably, but we did not do a transfer in as we did last year, correct?
That is correct. So we've had, thus far, we've had performance that is adequate, and if you look at the revenues for FY23 as recommended, we're recommending that some of that levy savings from IMRF is being transferred to the risk management levy. Both of those levies have no statutory cap, so you levy as much as you need in both of those and a couple other funds. And based on pending litigation and that we know is out there, and the outside counsel costs associated with those pieces of litigation, in taking in combination also with looking at cash flows for this fund, we felt it appropriate to recommend that we shift that levy savings in IMRF to the risk management fund so that we can continue to get that fund balance back to where it needs to be. And that fund balance, is should be, this is a property tax supported fund, so it should be 24% of expenditures, and it's getting close to that. 3,712,000 is, I did the math wrong. Hold on one sec. is going to be, it's roughly about 16%. So the fund balance, we're recommend, if performance next year comes in the way that we've budgeted for it, we'll finish next year at 16% of expenditure. So on the path to getting to compliance.
And since you really don't, it's hard to pinpoint the exact expenditures. How do you look over historically how much it has cost to come up with a number for the next year?
So, great question, Mr. Chairman. And for everyone's benefit that maybe isn't looking at the book, the Risk Management Fund has three primary responsibilities. First are unemployment claims, and for that portion of it, which is a small portion of the budget, we actually do kind of look at historical trends. The second component, which is again a smaller component, is workers' compensation claims. And again, as we report out to this committee on a regular basis, we look at past history, see where the open claims actually are, and then working with either the state's attorney's office or in the past outside Workmen's Comp Council, figure out what those exposures are going to be and then budget accordingly. And then the largest and third and final component of the Risk Management Fund is all of our liability claims. Now that also includes all of our liability premium costs, all of our reinsurance premium costs, and then for that section we look at historically what claims have been, and then we also look at what those outstanding pending litigation obligations might be. And I think we've talked to the full board and to the executive committee in the past about a couple of outstanding pieces of litigation that have pretty significant third-party attorney fees associated with them, and potential judgments that could adverse judgments, should they come to pass, would also be paid partially out of this fund until it hits any of our reinsurance levels. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Does anybody have any questions about the risk fund? Okay. I've just been flipping through. I thought I've asked questions and gotten answers, and I thought I would ask them again just to get them on the record. One of the questions I'd had for the ERP fund was that looks like we still have expenditures for consultants. So I had asked Scott. I thought we're already well on our way with that program, and so if you could just explain.
Yeah, happy to, Mr. Chairman. So, the ERP fund was set up as a capital project fund to budget for and implement our new ERP system. We are still on track to go live January 1 with our new ERP system. That is both finance and HR from a software perspective. If you recall, the board awarded contracts to Tyler Technologies for their Munis software product, and then also Barry Dunn, McNeil and Parker as our project management consultant. We are accounting for all those project expenses in this fund, and you can see in FY21 we transferred almost $2.2 million from IT services because we had been building up the reserves in the IT fund for this project for a number of years. And so we have that bucket of money to work off of. Once we go live, there are going to be some post go live costs from both Tyler and from Barry Dunn for the first several months of the year. But this also is going to be long term, and you can see it in the expenditures table at the bottom of page 31. You'll see software which is maintenance, lease. You can see that we've got in FY23 $333,000 in software maintenance and lease costs. So while we're still in this go live and immediate post go live period, we have the software cost associated with to Tyler for the product, for obviously security patches, for any updates that they might push out. That dollar number reflects the contractual obligation tied back to the the competitive procurement that you awarded Tyler for the software to.
Thank you for that. Go ahead, Steve.
Just as I think a reference, that contract that we signed, I think, was it a 10-year maintenance agreement on that contract?
Either 8 or 10.
Okay, so we've got that locked in per the contract.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I did not go linear down in the budget book here, so.
It's all right.
And jumping around, keeping everybody on their toes. Does anybody have any other questions on any of the other items in the yellow, or not yellow pages, orange pages? Okay, so I guess just all those in favor of the budget in the orange pages as presented, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, we're gonna move on to our informational items, and first is Pcaps. Welcome back, Becky.
All right, as usual, I don't have anything to add, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Becky? No? Thank you. Welcome back from vacation. Becky graciously answered emails while she was on vacation. Yes, Linda.
Once again, I want to thank Becky for responding to a constituent concern. For whatever reason, many of my constituents' concerns involve Pcaps, and so I appreciate how quickly and thoroughly she provides information about these things. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is our workforce report. Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll get that open here. So you'll find that on page 6 in your packet. As always, the top third of the page, back up and say, this represents activity through the end of August. Top third of the page represents hiring status and applicant status. Again, as we say every month, so the committee members are all happy, but for those that might be watching the live stream for the first time, just because someone a job is posted in the month of August doesn't mean someone is hired in the month of August. Middle third represents the current diversity of our workforce, and the bottom third of the page represents employee separations. Happy to answer or try to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Scott? Okay. Next, we'll go to our first resolution. It is the FY 2023 authorized staffing count. Could I get a motion to put it on the floor, please? Thank you, Betty. And a second? Junior? Thank you. All right.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. This is one of the many budget-related resolutions that committees are taking up yesterday and today. This specifically is the staffing head count related to the offices that report to the county administrator, because those are the offices that you have direct control over. As we note in the budget book, and we've talked before, the overall personnel numbers and charts that we present in the budget highlights section represent not full-time equivalents, but actual budgeted equivalents, because for both the countywide elected offices throughout the organization and the quasi-independent boards, agencies, and commissions, you have, even though in many instances you have co-employer relationships for the represented team members, your authority is at the level of appropriating dollars, and then those offices can use those dollars as they see fit, provided they're within the collective bargaining agreements for those employees and whatnot. But for the offices that report to the administrator, you do have direct oversight in terms of how many positions are actually going to be authorized. And you can see based on the agenda briefing that's in the packet, the recommended budget increases the number for the offices reporting to me by 1.5 FTEs. I'll just quickly walk through them. The reduction of a half of a position at Headington Oaks, that is the remnants of the Headington Oaks finance director. If you recall, we only, last year we budgeted for full-time, but only for half a year. And so we're cleaning that up. You can see county administration increases by 1.4. That is a couple of things. First and foremost, that's the conversion of the management analyst position to a full-time position to be a DEI line staff position. It's going to be a DEI generalist. It's also reallocating, the other portion of that is, the 0.4 is reallocating communications staff from the solid waste management fund. The increase of 1.0 in the highway department, that's to account for the administrative support position that the team member formerly worked in the county auditor's office and is now working in the county highway department. There is a decrease of 0.6 of a full-time equivalent position in recycling and resource conservation. That's partially tied back to the 0.4 ad in county admin. The other 0.2 actually gets shifted to the sheriff's office. And then in employee health, there is a 0.2 increase, and that's just a function of how we allocate some of county administration's headcount across various funds. And it actually is, in terms of a net, there's in terms of, we're not adding 0.2 people or bodies to the organization. It's just an allocation change. So happy to answer any questions.
Just for clarification, the DEI is the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office.
Yes,
Who
that
will
is
be
correct.
under the Diversity, Inclusion, or Equity and Inclusion Officer.
Correct.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions on the staffing changes? Nope. Okay. All those in favor of this resolution, please state aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. And the last one, let me get back here, is a resolution adopting the 2023 Peoria County Employee Health Premiums. Can I get a motion to put this on the floor, please? Thank you, Junior. In a second. Thank you, Betty. Okay, Shauna.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. First of all, thank you very much for your time yesterday. I know that was a special meeting in a week that is chock full of meetings, so I really appreciate everybody's time and attention for that, so thank you. I wanted to draw attention, and I don't know at what point we need to approve the amendment in terms of rules of order. My fault, I inadvertently left off a section of the chart when I copied and pasted it into the agenda briefing, and so we updated some of the wording in the resolution to include that. What the only difference is, if you go to the packet that Jan put on your desk, is the bottom chart. We have two different groups of retirees. The first was already reflected. Those are those that are Medicare eligible, and therefore our IMRF over age 65 retirees that are on our Medicare wraparound plan, that was included. I neglected to include the retirees that are in the under age 65 group. So last year, and then recommended again this year, we are recommending there is no subsidy to the IMRF over age 65 group because that's a wrap plan, not a standalone plan. But last year, the subsidy that you approved did include the under 65 group. And so we are recommending that we subsidize those again at that same reduced level as before. So, so that is the difference in the amendment, is that chart. The as we talked about yesterday, the premiums that are before you do include a subsidy If you'll recall, last year, I believe that was around $355,000. We are recommending that that subsidy start to be ratcheted back in an effort to kind of ease the employees into that cost again. So we are looking at reducing that subsidy by about a third. So the total cost of the subsidy this year is about $250,000. So it does reduce that. The other strategy that we're taking this year with the premiums that we talked a little bit about yesterday is that we are, instead of in previous years doing an across-the-board increase of 10%, 15%, we are doing it by tier. And that is, if you'll recall from yesterday, to realign the individual tiers with the actual cost of providing those coverages within those tiers. So single coverage, as you'll see in the chart, if you go to the far right, that shows what the percentage annual increase is for the employee and the employer. EE stands for employee, ER stands for employer. And so you'll see that for single coverage, those were already pretty well aligned on the PPO plan, so that's a 3% increase, and then it starts to increase from there based upon how we needed to restructure that within our actuarial analysis from NIHART. So we talked about that yesterday, but I did want to point it out with the chart in front of you. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I just want to say real quick, and just for clarification for the amendment, the number didn't change. It's the same number. It's just
Right. I just didn't
they're
show it on the
included in
chart.
it. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead, Betty.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Betty.
When you speak of rationing back, would you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So last year, the subsidy that was included was a 30% subsidy. So we were subsidizing 30% of the increase for employees. This year, we are recommending, or I'm sorry, 35%. This year, we're recommending that will be about 25%. So it's still a subsidy, but it is not at the same rate of subsidy.
So that would be in addition to what the employee cost or the employer cost is, then it's an additional subsidizing than the employee cost. So it's less for them to pay.
And that keeps the health fund itself whole. The health fund still will receive the same amount of revenue. It's just the county is taking on a little bit of that increase on behalf of the employee. So there's no impact to the fund balance itself. Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions? I know we covered this quite a bit yesterday. And I would still like to commit that we have another year of this contract, and then we go for open bid to see what the next is going to look like. And I'm still committed to doing what's best for our employees and being responsible also to the taxpayers. And I know what we have is okay, but I think, if we accept that and don't try to do better, we won't do better. So, okay. All those in favor of the resolution, the amended resolution? Get a motion for the amendment? Okay. Can I get a motion to accept the amended?
I'll make a motion to amend to include the retiree premiums that were presented in the updated chart.
Thank you. Can I get a second? Thank you, Betty. Okay. All those in favor of the resolution as amended, please.
Amendment.
Okay. All those in favor of the amendment, please state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Now we'll vote on the resolution as amended. Correct? Correct. Okay. All those in favor of the resolution as amended, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. All right. Do we have anything for miscellaneous? Okay. Thank you. We're adjourned.